Good afternoon, students. So I am making this video to talk to you about Module 3 in N6105, which is the module that you'll write your methods section for your systematic review. So there's just a few things that you need to think about. The section is supposed to be clear and concise and not a lot of extra words. So just think of it as getting to the point, telling people what you did in terms of your search and how you narrow down the articles, and that's it. So this is my loneliness and cognitive function systematic review that you've seen before. So at this point you've already done the introduction as well as the background. So we'll go ahead and go right here just to refresh your memory about the purpose. In purple here, the purpose of this systematic review was to synthesize current findings on the correlations of loneliness and cognitive function in older adults greater than or equal to 60 years old. So you can see here in your methods section, you start with the databases that you search. So I looked at PubMed, Medline, and PsycInfo. Then I went on to talk about the specific keywords that I used, and so I put all those in parentheses and listed them down here. So then on the next page, that continues with cognitive processes, cognitive function, etc. I did add one sentence here because it's something that's unique to this review, is that people might want to know why did I search social isolation, because that is different than loneliness. They're not the same thing. So I just put in a little explanation here that the reason I searched for social isolation is because I wanted to look in those articles and see if they actually measured loneliness, because sometimes they do. So that's why I searched for that article, those articles as well. So then I go in to talk about the inclusion criteria. And so these should be directly related to the purpose of your study. So that's why I have it highlighted here. So my criteria for inclusion were original quantitative or qualitative research, reports written in English, studied on human participants with a mean range in age of greater than or equal to 60 years, and it had to be published between January 2000 and July of 2013. So then I just went also to say that review or opinion papers were excluded. So that's a common error that students make, is that they will include a systematic review in their articles here. And so that's not the proper thing to do, because a systematic review is not an original research study. So you need to make sure that if you find one, that it's different than what you're going to do here in this paper, and that it's not included. Okay, so then I go on to say that originally I had 832 articles. So that was in PubMed. There were 795 in Medline, 432 in PsycInfo. So then I removed all the duplicates and I looked at the abstracts, and then that total number was reduced down to 15. So then I looked at the full text version of each study. Studies that didn't meet my inclusion criteria up here in pink were eliminated, and that left me with 8 studies. And then I did an additional manual search of references that yielded another 2 studies. So that means in those 8 studies that I had, I looked through their references to see if there was something there that I didn't find in my search. And so I found 2 more. So that's it. And then the other thing that goes with this is the, where can I find it? The table. So this is, where is it? Well, I can't seem to find it in this one. So we'll look at it in another one. Okay, so then, let's see. I have another example. And that is this sex hormone and cognitive function in older adult systematic review. So you've seen this one as well. So again, I have the purpose here in purple. The purpose of this systematic review is to summarize current findings on the associations between endogenous estrogen testosterone and cognitive function in older adults aged greater than or equal to 60 years. So, as depicted in figure 1, and this is the table I was looking for in that other study and didn't find it. But so you're just going to describe again what you found and what you did in terms of your search. So I did a comprehensive electronic review in PubMed, Medline, and ScienceDirect databases. These again are all the different keywords that I used. The pink highlighted section here is the criteria for inclusion. So again, original quantitative research written in English, used human subjects, mean age of greater than or equal to 60 years old, and published January 97 through May 2012. So then I go on in the same manner as the other article, to talk about 388 were in PubMed, 232 were in Medline, 73 were in ScienceDirect. So if you look right up here in this table, it's the same thing. 388 PubMed, 232 in Medline, 73 in ScienceDirect. So that's a total of 693. There were 46 duplicates, so that left me with 647. So looking through the abstracts and the titles, I was able to exclude 591, which left 56. When I looked through those full text records, there were some 32 that actually didn't meet inclusion, or that were included. And so then of those, and it's the same thing I did in the other systematic review, is I looked through the reference list for all of those articles to see if there was something that I missed, and then I found another 2 there, so that left me with 26 total. So I just explained all that through here. In this one right here where it says during the search, several published systematic reviews on sex hormones and cognitive function was found, but only one was related to the specific aim of this review. And that was done in 2011, and this was published in 2014. So I needed to say how this was different than the one that was published just a few years ago. So I wrote in here that that review was focused only on testosterone in cognition and aging males. And the current systematic review differs in both that testosterone and estrogen were reviewed in association with cognitive function in both males and females. So it justifies why I would do this systematic review. Okay, so one more quick example for you, just something I want to say about inclusion and exclusion criteria. So this is a research study, so it's different than the systematic review. This is an original research study, cross-sectional, quantitative, that I did on spiritual pain in Meals on Wheels clients. So let's go down to the purpose and the methods. So the purpose of the study was to examine spiritual pain from a biobehavioral perspective to understand associations with psychosocial factors and salivary biomarkers of stress and inflammation in Meals on Wheels clients. So this is going to be written a little differently than the systematic review in terms of the method, but I just want to make a point about the inclusion and exclusion criteria. So this here, let me see if I can... Okay. Inclusion criteria here in pink were greater than 60 years of age. Next page. Ability to read and understand English. So the participants had to be able to read my surveys and understand and complete them. Not diagnosed with a neurodegenerative disease and currently enrolled in the Meals on Wheels program in Montgomery County, Texas. So it's very specific. So then the exclusion criteria are here in green, and its exclusion criteria were inability to complete psychometric instruments as instructed, inability to provide the saliva sample, and currently taking hormone replacement therapy or corticosteroids. So the reason I wanted to just point this out to you is that some students think that inclusion and exclusion criteria are simply just the opposite of each other. And that's not really how it is. So you can see here that I was including them. Let me go back. If they were greater than 60 years of age, they had to read and understand English, not diagnosed with a neurodegenerative disease, and enrolled in the Meals on Wheels program. So anybody who met those criteria were included. So we can just say that, let's just say, for example, that was 1,000 people. So 1,000 people were included in this study and had the opportunity to participate. But when it came down to it, and they actually, for example, couldn't complete, let's say they couldn't read, or they couldn't complete the psychometric instrument. So maybe they were too tired and it was 150 questions and they couldn't do it. So they were actually excluded. But it didn't have anything to do with their ability to read and understand English, because they could. They were just excluded because they couldn't finish it for whatever reason. Or the same thing, I really needed them to provide a saliva sample so that I could measure the biomarkers. So if they couldn't or wouldn't provide the saliva sample, they were excluded, even though they were originally included. And then if also I found out initially, that they met all the criteria for inclusion, and then once I went and looked at their medications, it came to be that they were on hormone replacement therapy, they were then ultimately excluded. So by the time I went through all these inclusion criteria and then considered all the exclusion criteria, my sample might have been down to 100 patients from 1,000 that were originally included. So that's just something to think about, that they're not simply just the opposite of each other. So you wouldn't write, for example, that they were inclusion criteria is that they're greater than or equal to 60 years old. And so then you wouldn't say that the first exclusion criteria is less than or equal to 59 years old, because you already stated that in the first one. So that's just an example, something to think about. And I hope this was helpful, and let me know if you have any other questions.